Hello and welcome to everyone joining us today. It's a happy Thursday and another episode of Red Dot Cafe. Again, we're so thankful for you being a part of our special series, and we hope that this live stream series brings value and inspiration to your daily life. I'm Angelica Cordero, TEDxSanAntonio's licensee, and I'll be your host for today's event. We want everyone to take part in this conversation, so please leave your questions and comments in the feed. As the chat continues, we'll be monitoring this feed to highlight questions that we might bring up to our speakers. Speaking of, we're happy to be joined today by 2018 TEDxSanAntonio speakers, planetary astrophysicist Dr. Natalie Hinkel and law enforcement officer Joe Smarro. In 2018, Natalie invited us into the world of planet hunting and shared what is required for a planet to be habitable or inhabited. That same year, Joe compelled us to broaden our understanding of mental health and embrace that if successful nudges can bring a cultural shift within a vast law enforcement agency, there's hope for change everywhere. Today, they join us to reflect on their talks, life since speaking, and how mental health has come to the forefront in their professions. Please join me in welcoming Natalie and Joseph. Hi.
Hi. Hello.
We're so glad to have you guys on here. I look forward to your discussion. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to the both of you.
Thanks, Angelica.
Thank you, Angelica. Great intro.
Hey, Joe. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you, even though it's virtually.
I know.
And we cannot give our embrace, but this is what we've kind of come to now. So yeah, it's a part of our new norm, I guess.
I know, but it's still been really good to connect with people even virtually and seeing people's faces more than just over the phone. It's just nice to be able to see your expression, see that shining face of yours.
It's the lighting.
Good
lighting.
Yeah, no, you did a good job on that.
Thank you. So what's been happening?
Let's see. So it's been like about a year and a half since we both did our talk. As for my job, I end up doing a lot of stuff on the computer. I end up writing a lot and doing code. So I've been working on that. I published a paper, which is pretty exciting. It's a planet prediction algorithm that's kind of similar to Netflix. So put that together and wrote a bunch of stuff about it, was interviewed about it. So we've basically been working on that, promoting that, and have a bunch of new projects that I've been doing since then. What about you? What have you been up to?
The complete opposite of that, actually. I've done almost none of that. And no, but since the talk, actually, the HBO documentary has come out, which has been great. So I spent most of 2019 kind of touring around and doing different film festivals, promoting the film, showing the film. And it was just an incredible experience being a part of that and seeing the 3 years of work that Jen McShane put into that to kind of come to fruition and to see how it connected with communities far and wide internationally, really. I mean, we had some incredible feedback. And so that made 2019 go by very, very fast. And for those that haven't seen it, the movie kind of ends with a portion of my TED Talk that I did in San Antonio. And that's kind of how the movie exits, as far as like, they ended filming, I guess, about the same time that I was doing the talk. And so it was a natural way to kind of close it out. But it's been a really, really busy year, an exciting year. And now we are facing unprecedented times. So it's like new challenges ahead.
But I remember when I first got to get to know you, and you and I would meet during like rehearsals and stuff like that, and we'd hang out, and then we started doing like the dress rehearsals at the Empire Theater, and suddenly this crew was around you, and I was like the camera crew and with the mics and everything, and I was just like, "Hey Joe, what's happening? What is this?"
Yeah.
And you were so like chill about it. You were just like, "Yeah, it's just this thing that's going on." Like, and so we basically just like ignored it for a while, and then suddenly this massive documentary about you, and I just couldn't believe that. Like, that was so impressive, and it's a wonderful, wonderful documentary. I definitely cried many times.
Thank you. Yeah. No, again, at that point, again, that was the tail end of 3 years, and so I had become very accustomed to, them just being around, always just in my space, and so it was their family. Honestly, I mean, it was so comfortable for me at that point to where I could naturally just be completely who I was, and it really was very unintrusive at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a cool experience. It was new for you guys, but I was already good with it. But
it was
anyway,
only
super
like
cool.
on the stage. Like, it was when we were like in the wings and stuff like that. I remember you, me, and Gary Sweeney. We were just sitting there talking, and then like the guy was like, "Hey, Joe, we're gonna record some stuff," and I was like, "All right,
yeah."
That's cool.
Meanwhile, I'm freaking out because I still at that moment did not have my talk memorized, and so yeah, it was kind of nerve wracking because I was like, I have a lot of work to do, and this is interfering with my practice time, which I'm a classic procrastinator. So
well, thanks. I didn't like hanging out with you too.
So what's been? Hey, tell me, because I'm curious. Every time we've talked or connected or hung out since then, we've talked about everything except the talk. And so I know some people watching this are curious about the process and the talk, but I'm curious about you, kind of what's happened since your talk, feedback, people's comments, new connections, opportunities that have happened since your talk went live.
Oh, well, that's actually really, really nice of you. So the talk was sort of a breakdown of what I do in my science. I like, those are actual, like, I sort of numbered them out as I was speaking, but that's actually what I go through and do as part of my science, is try to understand what are the best stars, and then work my way down to like what are the best planets and those sorts of characteristics. And so the funny thing is that I've gotten a little lazy now when people are like, "Oh, what do you work on?" And I was like, "Oh, you should just go and watch my TED Talk."
Yeah.
Because it's an actual breakdown of what I do. But of course, I do it more with computers and stuff. So I do a lot of programming and coding and things like that. So, which is not something I think a lot of people realize. But as far as like other opportunities, I've gotten actually nice emails from students who end up finding the video, and so they reach out to me, which I really enjoy. Because I like being an online personality for people to reach out to. I like being people's personal astronomer. I say I'm always happy to do things like that.
Yeah.
And I'd ask you about yours, but yours is the whole documentary. And
well, no, but funny, similar experience though when you shared that, because I was somebody reached out to me from Okinawa, Japan, and they were asking Jesse and I, my business partner, to come out there and do some work. And so she goes, "Hey, other than your resume and your HBO documentary and your TED Talk, is there anything else you have that I could give them to like see if they want to hire you or not?" I'm like, good God, like what do normal, like what do usually people turn in? Like, I think that's pretty much all I've got. Like, if they need more, let me know. I'm not sure what else, but the movie did a great job of kind of capturing a lot of my life, from childhood to present moment, and kind of that journey, and it had a beautiful arc throughout it. And then the TED Talk for me really was kind of this shining moment, because it really was something that I'm super proud of. The talk in itself, the topic, I think, especially now, facing what we're facing in 2020, the first quarter of this year, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much fear, there's so much, there's absolutely been an increase just in mental health concerns and issues. And so I'm proud of the fact that I've done it, but I know that it's just a piece of the potential or opportunity of what could be, because really it takes a willingness from people, right? And I know that there's a lot of people sitting around right now, kind of going, stir crazy, if you will, with their time, and like, wondering what to do and how to fill their time. And so, yeah, it's like there's a whole lot of consumption happening of media, of various forms of media, not all positive, not all good. And so I think we just have to be very mindful and careful about what it is that we're spending our time on.
No, I think that's totally fair. So I've actually noticed sort of similar things within my own community. So, you know, there's about, I guess, like 8 to 10,000 astronomers in the world. A lot of them are in the US, but, you know, we connect on Twitter. There's a whole astronomy Twitter thing. And so for the first time, really, you know, since all the COVID-19 stuff has started, I've seen people really start to talk about their mental health and how they're doing, not just like, you know, things that they're reading and stuff, but like how they're actually feeling. And this is, I think, pretty new for the whole community. Being a scientist, you know, you get in it not for the money, but for the love of the science. And you go, you know, you spend a lot of time in school. You do undergrad, but then you do graduate school, which can last anywhere from like, you know, 4 to 8 years. Average time to get a science PhD is 6 years. And it's your whole life. You take classes and then you focus on research, and research is like all encompassing. You can easily get obsessed with it and just work on it, you know, 10, 12 hours a day, every day. And in a lot of ways, it's often kind of encouraged to do that because then you're very productive and then you have a lot of results and then, you know, you can further your career along and blah, blah, blah. So there's this natural tendency for people to be unhealthy when doing their science, when doing their work. And so, and they can oftentimes wear it as a badge of honor of like how hard I worked and how much I got done this year. And I mean, yeah, I, you know, ate ramen every day for a month and I haven't seen the sun and I don't have any friends or hobbies anymore. But, you know, but look at all this great stuff I produced. But then now here you are, people are like stuck inside and they can work all the time if they want to, but they realize that that's not a great idea for the long haul. So people are really starting to communicate to each other, which I really like. They're sort of taking off this, you know, this mask of trying to work super hard a lot. So, so yesterday I actually had a work telecon, and, you know, with people that I kind of know, some people I've known for, you know, years, if not decades. And we were talking about a project that we're working on, this huge project. And then after a bit, it just kind of devolved into talking about like how we're doing, what phone games we're playing, what sci-fi shows and books that we've been reading. And it was really, really nice, like to be able to connect with, you know, my work friends like that, you know, sort of under the umbrella of we're doing some work right now. We've talked about the project a bit, but just being able to see everybody and talk about this together, I really liked that, really appreciated that. And I think they did too. And we're like, oh, cool, we're going to do this again next week, right? Like, that's great. I'm looking forward to it. So,
yeah.
So that's been really nice on my end from what I've been seeing. It's a nice shift in the field.
Yeah, we've been doing something similar, but instead of talking about like planets and stars, it's been about Tiger King. Because who's not talking about Tiger King?
I haven't watched it.
You gotta watch. That's what I was going to ask you. We should do a poll on how many scientists have watched Tiger King, because I imagine it's pretty small.
Gauging by my Twitter, it's a decent.
Oh, really?
I probably could put a poll up right now.
Yeah. No, but what I think is super fascinating is, you know, and when I kind of first promoted this on Twitter that we were doing this talk together, is I said this thing of like, hey, what do a planetary astrophysicist and Joe Smarro have in common? Tune in to find out. So people have already realized the answer to that is nothing, but it's actually not true. And so I really quick want to just touch on the fact that if there's anyone watching, and I don't know what the reach of this is, but if there's anybody watching that has contemplated giving a talk, or even maybe you don't want to talk and you're happy being behind the scenes and volunteering your time, one of the greatest groups of people that I've ever met or been involved with has been TED, specifically TEDxSanAntonio. And it's afforded the opportunity to me to become a friend of Dr. Natalie Hinkel, because let's be honest, right? Like as a cop, and when I teach police officers all over the country, I tell them, if I were to ask your small circle of 5 friends, and if all 5 of them were other police officers, that's a problem, right? Because we have to be willing to expand our horizons beyond what we know and challenge our beliefs and really open up to different people, different opportunities. And so I'm very grateful to TEDx that you have come into my life, that we've developed the friendship that we have, that we can just randomly text each other out of the blue. And it has nothing to do with our jobs. It's just about life stuff. And because I can't relate to your logarithms and coding planets, and there's really like no need to relate or concern yourself with what's happening in my world. But from like a human approach, just that human being side of it, of connection is super important. And I think especially right now where there's so much negativity being pushed around and just mass media, and everyone consuming so much fear-based propaganda about like we're all going to die and that all the numbers are bad, and like while this is very serious, it's also important that we spend purposeful energy on actually connecting with people, even if it is virtually, because I think it's important that we, again, just do things like this right here. This is why I love that Angelica invited you and I to do this, especially together, because we're a team and we do nothing alone. Something like that. That's actually not a thing, but yeah. So no, I think it's great. And I'm grateful when I do my gratitude practice every morning. The last few weeks, technology has come up. That's something that we take for granted, right? But if we have the ability to log in and plug in and sign up or instantly connect to people almost anywhere in the world, that's a pretty beautiful thing. So I think we have a lot to be grateful for in moments like this, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. Often I'll sort of save like friend conversations to be like on the weekends and everything, because like I'm working during the week. But now I realize like I can't do that. But also I don't want to do that. I want to get like in my social interactions. So I've just taken to like randomly calling some people sometimes, be like, hey, I know you're at home. You want to talk for a while?
Yeah, or if you're not, I'm calling Joe.
Right. I also got I also got a new app, Marco Polo, like, and then WhatsApp and blah blah blah. And so it's all these different things to help stay connected to people. But so I have like a little confession, was that I actually applied for TEDxSanAntonio, like to do the talk within, I think, 2 weeks of me moving to San Antonio. So in other words, like barely had internet, like had, my laptop and nothing else on like a table, and like recorded my application. But I did it to make friends. That was part of the reason, because doing like TEDx, because I've also done TEDx Nashville, but doing TEDx is, you get to meet interested and interesting people. You get to meet other people who are passionate about what they do. Exactly.
You got a friend in me.
In the city, and especially because it was a new city for me, I was like, well, this is a great opportunity for me to meet the city, have the city meet me, but also meet some people. And so it was actually like one of my favorite parts, is that I got to, hang out with you and Gary and Angelica, and actually, like, Jennifer, I've hung out with her, and Melissa, like, I've actually hung out with a bunch of our cohort, and I really liked that. And I've liked being connected to you guys.
Yeah, instant community for sure. It's been a great experience. Yeah, I did my application. So they have like a deadline, and then they did an extension. And so I was contemplating. I had a couple people pushing me, encouraging me, and I was insecure about it, to be honest, because what does that say about me if I don't get approved? Like, ouch, it hurts my heart. Right. And so, insecurity drives a lot of things in life, but I try to avoid it. And so when they had that extension, and I was like, fine, it was like 11:50 at night. The deadline was midnight, and I did probably, I don't know, 612 takes because I hate, believe it or not, recording myself and looking at myself and like listening back. And I'm like,
what
this
we're
is
doing right
terrible.
now,
This is
what we're
terrible.
doing like right now.
Right. Yeah, it's
Staring
like hypercritical, so I couldn't get happy with one. And I finally was just like, I submit, like I surrender, just send it in. And so when I found out I got selected, I was kind of really surprised and, but also equally happy and grateful. And so, yeah, it was just an incredible process. And I'm grateful that Angelica just popped back on because honestly, every time I see her face and hair, it makes my day better.
I know, right? I know. I absolutely love it when
It's a true story.
put her hair
Be
short.
quiet, you guys.
Yeah, her hair short, and you were so self-conscious about it, and I was like, oh, girl.
It just screams fun.
Oh my God, right? I know, I love it.
Yeah.
So we've got some questions, but I wanted to ask, I know that you guys briefly spoke about how your talks and your professions are so disparate from each other. They're so different, but I'm curious to know what really actually bonded the two of you together, despite the fact of your professions being so drastically different from each other.
For me, I'm going to go first.
Please.
For me, it was that it was your sense of humor and your sarcasm, because I realized that without meaning to, during the rehearsals, we would both just like sit back in our chairs and kind of like lean towards each other and then start whispering different things about like not even necessarily like other people. It wasn't ragging on people, but it was definitely just like comments to each other, funny things, silly things, and I was just like, oh, he's a lot of fun to be around. And then to find out that you have this great sense of humor, and then your talk, the first time I heard your talk, and I was just like blown away, just absolutely floored about like not just your life, but what you do now, what you do for other people. And I was like, who is this person? He's just like amazing. So I was like, I'm going to be friends with him. I decided.
Yeah, so that is definitely a very similar answer. I would say it's secondary for me because I did, I would say, and this is not coming from like a braggadocious place, but I have like a unique ability to see people on like a deeper level than their exterior representative selves, but it's because I'm intentional about it. And so
very good at this.
When I saw Natalie, I feel like I truly saw her beyond her doctorate, beyond her being a scientist, beyond her being a fellow TED speaker. It was just the human in her where I was like, yes, I want to like connect to that person. And then everything else really just became natural and secondary of like, oh, and she's funny. Like she's a scientist who's like actually really funny. This is incredible. This is challenging all of the stereotypes, right? Because I don't know any scientists, to be honest. And so I had no idea what to expect. But really, it was for me, it was this human connection of I saw somebody, and I probably was on some level able to sense that you were needing or craving or desiring a community or a new group of friends. And so whatever it was, I felt compelled, I felt pulled into it. And then it's been great. I mean, even if we go several months without talking, when we reconnect, it's like we never took a gap. And I think that that's one of the beautiful metrics in a solid relationship.
No, I totally agree. I remember we sort of like randomly hung out at a bar a few weeks ago, months ago as well.
I think it was a library. Oh, I think there was books in there.
Possibly.
Okay, it was a bar.
Yeah, but yeah, we hadn't hung out in a while, and then we all spent like the whole night together. It was supposed to be like for like an hour. Let's just have a quick, hi, and blah blah blah, and it ended up being the whole night. And it was I had such a great time. It's so nice to hang out with you and know that that's an option. I very, very much cherish your friendship.
One of the things that I love the most about the connection that the two of you have is actually the fact that you come from very different lives and backgrounds and experiences, and even despite all of that you were able to find a common ground in order to build a friendship off of, which is really it's really nice and refreshing to see that, you know, people of different backgrounds and experiences can still find a way in which to be friends. I'm going to take a question from our audience who's watching. So we have lots and lots of people that are really curious about you speaking about the application process. But I love this idea from Chris McDermott, who's asking, how often, if at all, do you watch your talk again and wish you could have done anything different?
I've watched my talk a few times, but it's really hard. It's really hard to watch yourself on stage. But I've watched it to try to make myself a better public speaker. And so like sometimes actually I'll have to pause it and like walk away for a little while and then come back and finish it. Cause to me, it's like a little cringy. The things I do wish that I'd done something a bit different with my TEDxSanAntonio talk. And that's, I wish I had connected it more to people's feelings about things. I ended up doing this for my TEDx Nashville talk, but it wasn't on purpose. It was just sort of like the way it came together. I talked about how we're all made of like star stuff and why that makes me feel good. I don't feel insignificant. I feel like really positive about it, which it didn't occur to me that that's a weird way to feel. But then with my TEDxSanAntonio talk, I ended up talking just focusing on the science, and I don't think that connected as well with people. I think people who are interested in science, they like it, but I wish I had focused a bit more on sort of the emotion of trying to find other life, what that means for me and my science. It's actually, I work with other people in other fields. I'm very much an interdisciplinary scientist, and that's actually been hard. It's been hard to, this is going to sound really pompous. Or sorry, what was the word that braggadocious, very braggadocious. It's hard to be a trailblazer. Nobody expects me to do what I do, which means there's no place for it in different communities and stuff. Like I don't always fit in when I go to conferences, when I try to submit papers, journals aren't always the right journal. And people don't often get what I'm doing because they haven't seen it before. And so that's been hard. So I wish I had talked a bit more about that in terms of my science and not just about the science.
Joe, do you want to answer the question as well?
Yeah, real quickly. So I probably watched it in its entirety maybe twice, because even the segment that they have at the end of the documentary is a shortened version. I think it's like 6 or 7 minutes of it total. So it's not the full thing, because I've watched that one probably, I don't know, 30 times now because of how many times I've sat in the theater to watch the film. But the actual talk itself, maybe 2 times. And as far as what I wish I could have done different, I would say what I wish I could have done, or what I would have done, period, is rehearse more sooner. And the reason I say that is because for me, when I watch my talk back, I'm like, I don't even recognize that guy because I almost lost some of the personality in it. I know it's a relatively heavy-ish topic, but I know I was nervous. I was like shaken nervous up there. And so when I watch it, I'm like, good God, man, if I just had it memorized a lot sooner, I could have flowed better and interjected myself into it. But so for me, that was one of the like, I wish I could have taken it serious and listened to my curator, Dr. Emily Knoll, a lot sooner, because she would have been happier and there would have been a lot less people stressed out.
It's funny you brought that up because you actually answered a question that someone else had about how many hours you rehearsed. So I'm glad that you were open to answering that. We'll take another question, and it's from Jesse Trevino. Can you guys discuss the curation process and how involved it was, how your talk evolved, if at all?
Joe, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So the curation process is probably the single most important piece of from application to live on the stage. I would say the curation process is the most important, because I know from our group, everybody that showed up on the initial stage to do like we would have several meetings to do like rehearsals and just kind of read through our scripts. I don't know that anyone presented the same exact talk on the stage that they showed up with. And the power of that is you're actually relying on this collective community of brain power being greater than one to give you feedback of like, hey, I'm not feeling this piece. I'm not connecting to this piece. What if you talked more about this, spend a little more time on this? And so that curation process is super important. It was very involved because you actually get assigned a curator who you do these group curation sessions, but then you get individually assigned a person, and their primary function is to like stay on top of you, to remind you gently, hopefully. I had a great curator, but she was very patient with me, which is super important because I am a procrastinator. And so I never knew she was freaking out until the night before when we were doing rehearsals, and I still didn't have it memorized. And I saw the panic and I was like, oh my goodness, because after a few months, you actually have like a responsibility and obligation to your curator and to the process, right? To the TEDx community. And so if I were to go up there and kind of drop the ball, yeah, it might make me look silly or bad or whatever, but also it kind of is it's almost like a slap in the face of the entire process. And so I felt obligated to represent Emily well. I felt obligated to represent TEDx well. And so for me, it was very important that I showed up, albeit the 11 and a half hour, I showed up and I got through it. And so, yeah, I would really, really recommend having a strong curation process and a lot of rehearsal time poured into it so that you can relieve any stress or anxiety as much as possible.
No, I definitely agree. So actually, Angelica was my curator, and she taught me some really like valuable things that I still use about the way to integrate like metaphors that people are really that'll resonate with people in order to discuss my science and explain difficult things. I was trying to describe how we detect planets, and she's just like, this is not coming across, and you need something better. And so I ended up saying that like trying to find a planet, like how a planet influences a star is like trying to see how a raindrop influences a human being, like an average person. And she was just like, whoa. And I was like, yeah, no, my science is crazy hard. Also, sorry, my cat is wants to be a part of this. If you can hear her meowing in the background. Yeah.
All are welcome.
But yeah, so I learned a lot from Angelica, and also that I can't put in as many nerdy science fiction references as I would like. That's not appreciated. So I think I only had like 2 Star Trek references when I think originally I had like 5. But yeah, and I actually waited until like I think 2 weeks before the actual TEDx San Antonio night before I started even memorizing mine, because I was still editing it, and I refused to try to edit or to memorize something that's in like changing, because that's just the best way to get yourself super confused.
Yeah.
Well, I am so glad that you guys have been a part of today. We're about a little bit over, but I thought that it was a good chance for you to address certain things about the curation process. What Joe is not mentioning is that Joe has actually spent the last 2 years or year and a half on our selection committee and has been a part of selecting the last group of speakers that we had. And he also, as a speaker, helped curate another speaker, Hector Garcia, back in 2019. So it's been a pleasure to have speakers be involved in our speaker selection process, but also to have that firsthand experience to help guide them through, help guide other speakers through that same process that they know very well. Thank you both for being on. I'm so glad to have you. Any parting thoughts before we wrap the show?
I guess for me, it's been hard to remember that despite all the stuff that's happening, that it's not just happening just to you. Like it feels sometimes like our whole lives are on pause. and that we're, there's a lot of uncertainty. We're not, what's going to happen? How does this affect like decisions I might make in my life? But this is happening to everyone. And so it's good to take a moment and realize that like, we're not being set back. We just have to figure out a better way to move forward with these new circumstances. And that's something I've really been trying to think about, of how does this, everybody's in this together in the biggest way I think has ever, happened really in the whole world, possibly in history. And that's important to know. We're all dealing with a lot of stuff, and just to be good to ourselves and good to each other.
Yeah, I read, that's beautiful. And it reminds me of something I read just the other day, and it said, in our shared experiences, our differences go away. And to your point, like, we are all experiencing this, right? And so now is an incredible time and opportunity to not just pivot, and it's an opportunity to gain perspective. And I think that that's super important because, again, we have a choice, right? And if you boil things down in your day, it's kind of the Stoicism philosophy, but like, things in your control and things out of your control. But like, what is it that is in your control? The virus is not. You yourself are staying home, yes, washing yourself, washing your hands, social distancing. Those things are certainly in your control. But like, what's happening with COVID, where it's going, the financial, the markets, the job, all that stuff is out of our control. And so it does us no good to fixate on it, to stress, to worry over it. So what can we use the energy for ourselves? Consume good things, spend time with family, virtually connect with loved ones, play games, have fun, read more, do things that make you feel whole and well. And you might be impressed with how much better you see the world, instead of seeing this darkness that's around. There is a lot of light if we choose to see it. So just be intentional on how you spend your time. And we really appreciate those that have tuned in and watched this. It's so great seeing you, Natalie, my friend, and Angelica. Thank you so much for this invite. It really means a lot.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. Like, the last couple of days have been a little bit rough for me personally, but like, this actually has been a real joy, and I really appreciate it. So I'm happy to do a thing that just has filled me up a little bit in a time that I really need it. So
awesome. Well, we're so glad to have you guys as a part of our community. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Angelica. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all again for being a part of yet another episode of Red Dot Cafe. We're so thankful for Natalie and Joe for joining us today. I just wanted to make a brief reminder that we'll be back on next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at noon Central. Next week, we've got a wonderful slate of speakers, Trevor Muir, and a special local guest, along with Kira Alderman and Alex Bailey. You can find more information about Red Dot Cafe on our .com website, TEDxSanAntonio.com/Red Dot Cafe. And then briefly, I wanted to go ahead and answer a question that we had from Elizabeth Stevens about if TEDx will be coming out with some social distanced, high production value format. What I can let you know is that our team at TEDx San Antonio is working to figure out, what does this mean for us in the future, and how will our events change? I can also tell you that the TEDx community at large is also reviewing how our events will change and evolve, and be conscious of all the things that are happening in the world. One last reminder, if you're seeing the power of ideas manifesting in your communities, make sure to use the hashtag #PowerOfX to let us know. We've really enjoyed being a part of your day-to-day, and we look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday. Take care and have a great rest of the Thursday.